Hey, it's been a while. I'm glad I finally got around to making another video, and this one's a really important one because this one's for the parents, guardians, caretakers, because there's only so much time us SLPs get to spend with your children every week, and I've always been of the opinion that the guardians and caretakers are really, in a lot of ways, in the best position to really help their children work toward their goals because you're around them much more and you know them like so much better than we do, and you know them in a setting that we don't know them in. We don't know how they are at home, so you know all that. So you guys are all in a very important position. So I'm going to kind of go through one of the questions I get a lot is what can I do at home to help support my child and help them work toward their communication goals. So I'm going to kind of read through and talk about this. This is basically a home program I put together at the beginning of COVID when we weren't able to meet to kind of give parents some tools. And I'm going to go through the main areas that we school-based SLPs work with, which is articulation slash phonological processing, these things where it's just all about the sounds that the kids say, and also fluency or stuttering, and then language goals, expressive, receptive, and pragmatic or social language. We don't really do a lot with voice disorders. I've had maybe, I can count on one hand the number of kids I've ever worked with who had like a history of cleft lip or cleft palate or something that made it hard for them to produce a vocal tone. There's definitely a lot of strategies for that as well. And if you have any questions about that, please feel free to comment, and I'll be happy to talk about that. And we also don't do a lot with feeding or with swallowing disorders in the schools. Mostly these areas that I'm going to talk about. So getting right to it here, starting with articulation or phonological processes. So again, these are the kids that, for example, they say all their R's like W's, so or like U's. So like the word red would be wed, or the word teacher would be teacho. That's just one example. There could be all kinds of different speech sounds, or sometimes it's not even speech sounds, any particular speech sounds, but things like leaving off the consonants at the end of words. So instead of saying dog, they'd say daw, or instead of saying something like pencil, it'd be pencil, or something like that. There's all kinds of, and if you're not sure exactly what goals your kids are working on, feel free to reach out to me or to whoever's serving your child, and we'd be happy to inform you. Also, cluster reduction. So, saying the word stop would be top. That's another example of a phonological process. It's got nothing to do with the actual sounds, S or T. It's just putting them together that they struggle with. So the first tip for articulation phonological processes is always be modeling. I don't know if you're familiar with that famous Alec Baldwin scene in Glengarry Glen Ross when he's talking about the ABCs of real estate, always be closing. Well, in speech and language, always be modeling. That just basically means every time you're talking to your child, you're modeling correct pronunciation and you're saying every sound correctly. Now, I want to be really clear that I'm not, there's nothing wrong with what we call baby talk. I do baby talk all the time with my son at home, be like, oh, look at that baby, what's he doing? That's fine, as long as you're, making sure as much as possible to say all the sounds correctly. If you do a little high-pitched voice or something like that, that's fine. To give you an example of what I'm talking about, I once had an ARD with a guardian who was talking about her 8-year-old and how he asked her one day, we go to tutu day? We go to school today? And she said, no, we don't go to tutu today. And I was like, no, you gotta always be modeling. And this, a big one that really just doing that all the time can help a lot. As much as possible, direct the child's attention to your mouth. If you didn't, like if they said the word incorrectly, like dog, look at my mouth, pencil, anything you can do to direct their attention, because a lot of times kids, it's really that they just don't hear what they sound like, or they're not really paying attention to what's happening in their mouth. And kids a lot of times feel that, especially really little kids, if they feel like if they know what they're talking about, well then you know what they're talking about, and you have to gently remind them that, no, I don't. Even though as a parent, you probably do. I mean, that's one of the things about parents is we know our kids' speech patterns. We know what their wants and needs typically are. And it's very easy to just path of least resistance, just give them what it is they're asking for. But as much as possible, try to help them say it correctly, even though you know what they're talking about. And this kind of leads into the second point, which is let them know when you don't understand them. It's okay to let them know, and this will help raise their awareness of how important articulation is to communicate. A third thing would be to help them repeat the words they misarticulate. So you would, again, have them look at your mouth and use a real slower rate of speech and really emphasize it. So you would say, no, not tutti, cookie, cookie. And k is a hard one. I'm going to do videos actually later on about the individual sounds and how to teach them. But cookie's kind of a hard one because k isn't really very visible. Your tongue is like this in the back, all the way up in the back of your mouth. So, but you can still open your mouth and let them see that your tongue is not touching like t, t, t. So that's an example. And once again, apologies for my janky teeth. It's just, but hey, it's a conversation starter. Kids always ask me, what's wrong with your teeth? I'm like, kids who never put sentences together will ask me that. It's great. A fourth thing would be to show your child familiar objects or pictures of familiar objects and say the words for those objects correctly and incorrectly, and then try to have them guess if you said it correctly or not. So again, using the cookie example, you say, tutti, is that right? What about cookie? Is that right? And then, of course, if they guess right, if they guess incorrectly, it's like, it's okay, just try again. Or remind them, tutti. It's not tutti, it's cookie. And then once they start guessing it correctly, then you can say, oh, good job. And emphasizing those sounds, speaking slowly is great. Looking at your mouth, I'm going to harp on these a lot because these are, I mean, really honestly, that's a lot of what we do in speech therapy is just directing attention to what's happening. Number 5 would be talk to your child as much as possible. Ask open-ended questions, requesting for information, like what are you doing? Tell me about your favorite princess or superhero or cartoon character, a video game. Repeat the things your child says with correct articulation, emphasizing the sounds that they misarticulate. And this demonstrates good listening skills as well as, again, increasing that awareness of the words, the sounds that they're saying incorrectly. And it's just a good idea in general, as much as possible, give your children opportunities to speak and, help them get used to things like conversational turn taking and listening to what the person said and then, staying on topic, all those kinds of things. Number 6 was that, and this is an important one because one of the biggest barriers working with articulation is kids get frustrated. Speech and communication, it's a very fundamental thing, and it can be very frustrating. And when you're trying to be understood and people don't understand you and you feel like you're working really hard and it's just not working out. But let them know that, take a break and let them know that they are not alone at all. There are many, I've worked with literally hundreds of kids that struggle with this stuff, and the ones who take it seriously and work hard at it, they master it, and sometimes even the ones who don't work hard at it, you'll come back from summer vacation and suddenly all these sounds they were struggling with, they're not doing it anymore, and they don't even really remember that there was a time when they didn't, which is great. But yeah, let the children know that everyone has different things that they struggle with. Everybody's got things that are difficult for them. This just happens to be their thing. And that if they have patience, they'll get where they want to go, and it'll become easy after a while. It's hard now, but it'll become easy. I talk a lot. I used to be a guitar teacher, and I use a lot of times I use the analogy of learning how to play an instrument. The difference is instruments will challenge you forever. You'll never feel like you ever mastered it. If you do, then you probably haven't heard anybody that's better than you. But speech, once you get that sound down, you got it. You don't have to practice it anymore. It just becomes the thing that you do, and you've replaced that habit with another habit. And again, this is why it's so important to do it while you're young. because the younger you are, the easier it'll be to master that. Now, of course, there are different ages at which kids are expected to have mastered certain sounds. If you're not sure if the sound or the class of sounds that they're working on is age appropriate, again, feel free to reach out to your school-based SLP or myself if you're one of my kids, and I'll be happy to tell you. I will let you know that R and L, those are big ones that we see a lot, and a lot of times those are later developing sounds. It's not at all uncommon to hear kids as old as 6 or 7 still struggling with those. Once they get to around 2nd, 3rd grade, that's when we start thinking, okay, this isn't correcting itself. We need to start working on it. So yeah, those are the things that I would recommend for working on articulation or phonological processes. And again, feel free to reach out in the comments, or if you're one of my kids, feel free to contact me. You'll be able to just call the school; they'll get you in touch with me, or you can come by my office. I got all my contact info. Fluency and stuttering. Once again, always be modeling. And when it comes to things like fluency and stuttering, you want to practice talking to them in a slightly slower rate. One of the things that I do when I'm working with children who stutter is that I try to spend the entire time speaking at about the rate I'm speaking right now, which is not my normal rate of speech. I normally speak a little faster than this, and if you listen back to the last segment again, or what I'm going to do later on, you'll hear how, yeah, he did slow down a little bit. So I'm going to be doing this rate of speech for the entire stuttering section because I want to model it, but also just to make you aware, because those of us who don't stutter or don't have any speech communication difficulties, it can be really helpful to remember just how hard it is to think about how you're speaking. We don't like to do that. We like to just say what we got to say, and having to think about, oh, I've got to maintain this slower rate of speech can be really help build empathy with what it takes. And I tell kids a lot of times, think about James Earl Jones, the actor who played Darth Vader in Mufasa in the animated Lion King. A lot of people don't know that he stutters. And I didn't say that in the past tense. You've never heard him stutter because he mastered his strategies. And that's why every time you hear him speak, it's in this slower rate. It's not slow, but it's just a little slower. And that's actually worked really well for him because he has that very deep, resonant voice, and when he speaks at that slower rate, it makes everything he says sound incredibly profound. I mean, he could read the phone book and it would sound like the most profound wisdom you ever heard. So yeah, it's okay to speak a little slower, and most kids and adults who stutter, if they slow down a little bit, it can greatly reduce the amount of stuttering, and in a lot of cases even eliminate it. There are other strategies as well, and we'll talk a little bit about those, but if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Number 2 would be, and this is a really important one, don't interrupt your child or finish his or her sentences. You want to let them speak and get it out, because honestly, we don't know a whole lot about stuttering, but the things that we know, we know. And one of the things that we know is that feelings of anxiety about speaking situations make stuttering a lot more pronounced. So you want to really work on letting them speak. And if they get stuck on a word, like a lot of kids will have blocks where they kind of get stuck a little bit, just encourage them to stop, take a deep breath, and start over again slowly. There's a techniques that we call easy onset phonation and light contact. There's a lot to be said about that, but just for the sake of this video, keeping it simple, if they get stuck, they can just stop, take a breath, and then as they're breathing out, if they're saying a word like pizza, you see them get stuck, and you can start over again. Pizza, that helps a lot. Not always, but it can be really helpful with kids who do that version of stuttering, blocking as we call it. There's also prolongations, which some kids do. And basically, once again, just encourage them to take a breath, start over again, and slow down. As much as possible, avoid any facial expressions or body language that would communicate frustration or impatience when your child is in the middle of a stutter. This can be very difficult. The slightest, little thing like, anything that you do with your face or if your body language goes down, even a little bit, they can notice it. So, don't be hard on yourself, but just be aware of that and try as much as you can to avoid doing that. As much as possible, do whatever you can to identify the situations or settings that make your child nervous and talk to them about those feelings. Like I said, extreme feelings of anxiety or excitement. Actually, most of the children I work with who stutter, they tend to stutter more when they're really excited because, again, they're talking fast. They want to, tell you about this really cool thing that happened that they saw or experienced. So talk to them about those situations and let them know that if they are able to relax a little bit, that will help. But of course, it's going to be hard. I mean, nobody expects that. That's an ongoing thing that can take a long time for children to feel more comfortable in speaking situations. But yes, definitely that helps. And this leads me to the number 6 point. The best advice I could give if you have a child who stutters is to visit the National Stuttering Association. Basically, I could put a link, but it's www.westutter.org. That's it. They have a whole lot of information, and they're very well organized, and there's all kinds of activities and meetings and programs, and you really can't overstate how powerful it can be for children to just simply meet other children who stutter and to be in speaking situations in which they know no one is thinking anything about, the fact that you stutter. Everybody's doing it, and it's not a big deal. And that's really, to help manage those feelings of nervousness. Excitement is a little harder, but nervousness, it can be really powerful just to help them realize that it's not that big a deal. A lot of people stutter. Everybody really, to some degree, stutters. Every time you've seen a public speaker or somebody giving a presentation and they go, and kids saying that's all. Those are all disfluencies. We don't think of them that way. So see, I just did it. And I did it again. So yeah, that's a great resource. And wherever you live, there's almost certainly a chapter nearby, and they have a child's program. They have adult programs. It's great. I've hung out with some of the people in that organization, and they really do a great job, and they take what they do very seriously. And above else, number 7, encourage your child to keep talking. That's really our first goal when it comes to children who stutter. It seems counterintuitive, but we're not trying to cure stuttering. We can't do that. That's not something that is yet, because you can't cure something if you don't know what causes it. And the research is still ongoing. There's some evidence to suggest a possible genetic component, and at the time that I'm recording this at least, and a lot of the people who are researching stuttering are people who themselves stutter. So there's a lot of vested interest in trying to understand what causes this, but we know that the best thing you can do is to let your children know that they have important, interesting, helpful, and kind things to say, and that if they didn't say those things because they stutter, that would be sad. Like, ultimately, you want to hear what they have to say more than you want to hear them not stutter. That's the best important message that you can give them. And it'll help boost their confidence, and they might even start to stutter less, because again, those feelings of anxiety and nervousness, they can exacerbate stuttering to quite a degree. So the more your child feels like stuttering is no big deal, the more confident they will be, and the more likely they will stutter less. But yes, keep them talking. That's actually why we work with children who stutter in the school setting, because there's an educational impediment there. If you're afraid to speak in class, well, you're not going to answer questions, you're not going to ask questions, you're not going to participate in classroom discussions. Later on, when you get to secondary school, and you start doing a lot more presentations and reports and speaking in front of the class, that's not going to be something you're going to be wanting to do. So yeah, it's a big deal to work with them on really the feelings first, the stuttering second. Let them know that it's okay, and there's strategies you can use. And if they don't use the strategies, that's okay, as long as they feel comfortable talking. That's the important thing. And then and as they get older, they can start to decide for themselves how they want to manage their stuttering. All right, and this leads us to language. This is actually the bulk of my caseload, children who struggle with expressive, receptive, and/or pragmatic or social language disorders or delays. And again, always be modeling. I'm going to go back to my regular rate of speech now because we're out of the stuttering portion. I was actually kind of getting used to it there for a while. But yeah, I usually speak at about this rate. So demonstrate good language and communication skills in front of your children. Read to them and discuss what you read with them, having them retell parts using pictures and asking who, what, where, when, why, and how questions, discussing vocabulary, and helping them pronounce words that they're unfamiliar with will help them with comprehension, vocabulary building, and language skills. Yes, really reading that doesn't matter what, if anything, your child's working with when it comes to speech or language. Reading to your children is always a good idea, as much as you can. And yeah, don't just stop with the reading. Ask them questions, both as you're reading the story, like, who's that? What's he doing? What's that look like? What happened? Why does he feel that way? Or why is that character sad? Or just whatever is happening, to try to get them to answer, and also this can help with social thinking as well, because they start trying to put the reason for why the character is feeling the way they are with the context, what's going on in the story. Use basic concepts like clothing, body parts, shapes, sizes, colors, textures in daily conversation when giving instructions to your children to help them connect the concept with the meaning. So, a good example of this is, if they're building with Legos or something, you could say, oh, that's the red block. It's shaped like a rectangle. And what shape is this one? And let's count the what do they call them? My son would know this, my older son, he's a Lego master. The little studs or whatever, how many are there? How many do we need for this section? Let's count, 1, 2, 3. So yeah, as much as you can, and body parts, where you can do the head, shoulders, knees, and toes game, or you can just simply do Simon Says type stuff, touch your nose, touch my nose. How many ears do you have? Anything you can when you're giving instructions or when you're just having a conversation with them. Like if you're washing your hands, put the soap on your hand, rub your hands together. That helps with, because they probably know how to do that, but putting the words with the action while they're doing it can be very powerful, because now they're starting to realize there's words for these things that they're doing, and those words have meaning attached to them. They're not just things that you say. Present oral questions and directions in a clear and concise manner and an appropriate pace. That's pretty self-explanatory. And a lot of these you might be thinking, I already do that. Yeah, that's great. A lot of these are things you probably have already been doing with your kids. And if you're doing them, well, now at least those are things that can help with their language and communication goals. Have your child repeat or paraphrase directions to ensure understanding. So, go put your shoes on. What are you going to go do? I'm going to put my shoes on. That can help them also with the pronouns, because if they might say, especially if they have autism, you might say, put your shoes on. They say, and you say, what did I tell you to do? Put your shoes on. No, you say, put my shoes on. Kids a lot of times will have struggles with realizing that you and me are, when I'm talking about you, I say you, but when you're talking about you, you say me. And as much as possible, just simply modeling it for them. If they don't say it correctly, say, oh, you can say, that's a big phrase. You can say, put my shoes on, or I'm putting my shoes on. If they're able to put more words together, you might phrase it like that. And that's just one example. You can think of a whole list of things that you might tell your child to do throughout the day, and just figure out a way that you can turn that into a language activity just by simply having them say it back to you. And the next one, yes, I love this one. I tell everyone as much as possible to use self-talk during activities or daily living. This is talking about what you are doing as you are doing it. So I always tell parents and guardians to think like a sportscaster. You're given the play-by-play. Oh, we're in the grocery store. Now we're walking to the produce section. Oh, look, there's the fruits. There's the vegetables. Here's an apple. An apple is a fruit. This apple is red and it's round. Bombardment. We're going to get 3 apples and we're going to put them in the bag. Then we're going to go to the vegetables and we're going to get some carrots. Just every single thing you're doing, just talk about it. Bombard them with language constantly. Just always talking about it. And no matter how small, like if they watch you washing the dishes. I'm washing the dishes. I turn on the water. Next, I pour the soap in the water. Look at the bubbles the soap makes when the water mixes with it. The water is hot. Now I'm going to pick up a dish. You go through that. So that's really important. And also kind of tying into that is parallel talk. This is talking about what your child is doing while they're doing it. So this is, again, like a sportscaster. You're given the play-by-play. Oh, look, you're drawing a picture. You're choosing the red crayon. Oh, you're drawing a house. The house has a red door. Now you're putting the red crayon down and you're picking up the blue one. And you don't have to do this all the time, but just as much as possible whenever you got the time. When you're watching your child or when you're doing something with them, just giving that kind of description. And it not only helps them connect, again, the actions and the things with the words, but it also helps to reinforce that idea of engagement, verbal engagement, talking about things. Like I said before with the... Well, we're going to get to that in a little bit. First, we're going to talk about expansion. So if the child says, want book, you could say, oh, you want the animal book. And then, have models say, I want the animal book. And you can break it down. Say, I want the animal book, And try to help build them that syntax, putting words in order and making sure that they're starting to understand that it's not just about words, because want and book, those are important words, but there's other little words in there too that we gotta get in. And then, ask open-ended questions when having a conversation. So what did you learn today? What are you doing? Encourage that spontaneous speech. Model appropriate answers like, I played with my sister, or we read a book about dinosaurs. And then, again, encourage your child to repeat it as much as they can. And if you have to break it down into chunks, you say, I played with my sister. And they might say, my sister. No, with my sister. Emphasize that word, with my sister. With my sister. They're not going to necessarily understand at first that there's a reason why they're doing this, and that's okay. You're just trying to build that habit of them doing that, so then it becomes more of just something they do whether or not they know why they're doing it. They don't have to know what with means necessarily. They'll get there eventually, hopefully. I mean, we can't guarantee anything, of course, but but even if they don't, it doesn't matter. They're doing it, and it's going to help their communication be more effective, and people understand better what they're talking about. Then, number 11, provide many opportunities for your child to speak by asking questions and initiating conversation, allowing extra time for oral responses. This ties into what we were talking about with both stuttering and articulation. Give them opportunities, ask those questions. Expand your child's vocabulary by reading interactive books that teach vocabulary like animals, people's names, vehicles, action words like sleeping, eating, running, and descriptive concepts like happy, sad, wet, dry, soft, rough, colors. It's just a few examples. There's all kinds of them. Number 13, this one can be fun because whenever you're watching movies or TV shows or YouTube videos or cartoons or anything, again, that's a great opportunity for self-talk, in a way, because you're kind of describing what you're watching. Oh, look, Mickey and his friends are building a boat. Donald is painting the boat red. Mickey is installing the steering wheel. And then you can have an opportunity to define words that your child doesn't know in simple and direct language, like install means to put something where it goes when you are fixing or building something. And again, if they don't quite get it at first, that's okay. The point is it's an ongoing process. You're always bombarding, you're always like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, picking everything else up and just keep on throwing it. And then you can pause the video and ask your child. I do this in therapy a lot. Pause the video and ask the child questions about what is happening and encouraging them to make predictions and inferences like, uh-oh, how does Donald feel? Oh, that's right, Donald is mad. Why is he mad? What do you think he is going to do next? Trying to get that prediction and inferencing, building up those skills. And lastly, rephrase anything your child says with correct grammar and syntax. This is called recasting. So you have your child repeat what you said. So the child says, Moana, swim. And then you could say, that's right, Moana is swimming. Say, Moana is swimming. Slow it down, and if you have to break it up, that's fine too. You can tell that I'm a big Disney fan. But it can be anything at all. If there's a narrative or there's a story or any sequence of actions or emotions, anything like that, it's a great opportunity just to start throwing that vocabulary and that language out there so that they start connecting those words with what's happening and making that so later on they can generalize that. When it's not just about what you're watching right now, but people outside of this story can be mad or can get wet or hurt themselves or smile or whatever. So they saw it here, and then they're going to see it other places too, and you want to reinforce that when you're out and about with them. So this is a long video, I guess longer, and I'm sorry about that. I was going to break into segments, but quite frankly, I don't really have a lot of the time for that. These are just very simple, and this is all pretty much stuff that I would tell a parent directly. So hopefully this will be a resource for you it's a lot of information, and if you have to go back and rewatch a segment, that's fine. And feel free to drop a comment if you have a question about something that I said, or I might make a video about it. Like I said, I'm going to do other videos. I can't say when exactly. Maybe ring the bell if you want to be notified, but I'm going to do other videos about specific language or specific speech sounds, how to teach those speech sounds, then if that's an area that your child's working with, then you can go and look and see what I do with them, and then you can help at home with those things as well. I just want to close off by saying that as much as possible, help your child to understand just how important language and communication is. A lot of kids, again, they don't understand that people outside of them don't know what they know, and you have to put it with words. It's really the best thing we have right now. We haven't yet evolved to the point where we can telepathically communicate with each other. But language can be very, there's a whole lot of things you can say. And I tell every single kid that I ever work with, you have important things to say. You have interesting things to say. You have helpful and kind things to say. And other people have all those things to say to you as well. And without language and communication, the human race wouldn't have lasted very long. You can try to bring down a mastodon or a saber-toothed tiger by yourself, but I wouldn't recommend it. Building a shelter by yourself, you could probably do it, but you're probably going to be able to build much more sophisticated and sturdy structures if you got somebody helping you, especially if that person might have ideas about building the structure that you didn't have, and then they could tell you their ideas, and you might like their idea, or it might give you an idea that's better than their idea. And I just tell kids, look around at all this stuff you see. This is all the result of thousands of years of people coming up with ideas and communicating them to other people, and then those people taking those ideas and coming up with better ideas or newer ideas and communicating those. It's all, this thing I'm doing right now. What kid doesn't love watching YouTube videos? How do you think this works? Because That's what they're doing. The people are communicating. The teachers all day long are communicating ideas to them. This computer or device or whatever you're watching this on wouldn't work without a special language that is just for these devices that can share this information. So as much as you can, really help your child to see that and to know that this is an important thing and it's for you as well as everybody else. This is not something that's for some people and not for you. This is yours too. These words are yours. So anyway, again, feel free to, I feel like I'm missing a lot of stuff, but if I am, please help me out by letting me know, by communicating with me. And then that can help to make things hopefully clearer and better and help you all have the resources you need. I cannot thank you enough, sincerely, for one, sharing your children with me and letting me be a part of their lives, and secondly, for all the work you do at home to help them feel loved and important and to reinforce the skills that they have and let them know they matter. Without that, I couldn't do my job. I can't help a kid who doesn't believe that there's anything they have to say. I can try, and I do, but it's so much easier when kids really feel like they have that power. So thank you for that, and I'll see you next time.